Good afternoon, everybody. I'm just assuming that it's okay, it's right. Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back. I hope everybody was able to stretch a little bit and just come down from the heavens that we were in back to earth. The agenda for our second half includes 3 speakers from different parts of the world. We have, oh, sorry, I forgot. We have Christian Saunders from the United Nations, Eric Zinyengere from Zimbabwe, and our own Noel Watson from Jamaica. So let's jump right into the lineup. We are so happy that we have a diverse group of presenters to round out today's discussions as we continue to take a critical look into the future of consulting. Out of the gates first will be Christian Saunders from the UN Office of Supply Chain Management, sharing his perspectives from a global purchaser perspective. He will be introduced by Rhea Butler from the Bahamas chapter, member of our regional board. Rhea?
Good afternoon, everyone. Christian Saunders is an Assistant Secretary General of the United Nations, having been appointed by the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres in December 2017, with responsibility for Central Support Services. On the 1st of January 2019, he was appointed Assistant Secretary General. Oops, hold on, my screen just went blank. 1 second.
Continue, Rhea, we can hear you.
Okay, yeah, but my screen just went blank. 1 quick second. Listen, this is when technology sometimes gets in our way, right?
I can do it if you like, Rhea.
All right, no, I got it. It came back up. All right, so in 2019, in the wake of serious financial and leadership crisis, Mr. Saunders was appointed Acting Commissioner General of the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine Refugees in the Near East, UNRWA, by the Secretary General, and tasked with reforming the agency and putting it back on the right path. Upon the successful completion of this assignment in April 2020, he resumed his duties in New York. In 2020, Mr. Saunders was designated the chair of the First Line of Defense Task Force, which has responsibility for overseeing the UN's system-wide healthcare and vaccination response to COVID-19. Mr. Saunders has over 30 years of experience in international affairs, much of it focusing on delivering results and overseeing major reforms leading to improved organizational effectiveness and efficiency. From 2013 to 2017, he served as the director of the Office of Coordinated Undersecretary, General for Management, where in addition to his regular duties, in 2014, he coordinated the duty of care for all staff serving in countries affected by the Ebola virus, and in 2015, the deployment of the organization's ERP system, UMOJA, across UN headquarters. In January of 2017, Mr. Saunders was appointed as a member of the high-level task force established by the Secretary General to improve the organization's approach to preventing and responding to sexual exploitation and abuse. He also chaired the working group that developed the United Nations new whistleblower policy. Mr. Saunders has broad experience across the United Nations and significant humanitarian and field experience, having begun his career with the Save the Children Fund UK. in the Sudan, and then in Mozambique, and his United Nations career with UNRWA in Gaza. He also served in various other postings with UNRWA, the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, UNHCR, Peacekeeping, and the United Nations Population Fund, UNFPA. A graduate of Royal Holloway College, University of London, and the University of Wales in the United Kingdom, Mr. Saunders is married with 3 children. It's a pleasure having you, Mr. Saunders. Welcome.
Thank you, Ria. And ladies and gentlemen from across the Caribbean and indeed the world, happy International Consultants Day. Claire is an impossible act to follow. So I'm not even going to try. Although there is one thing I would disagree with her on, and that's even though some of the structures in the United Nations still reflect how the world was in 1945, there are thousands and thousands of people like me that work for the United Nations that don't have a colonial mindset. I think it's important that that is said. Anyway, I'm delighted to be here with you on this important day and to be able to share with you some thoughts on the future of management consulting from my perspective as somebody who's worked with and across the United Nations for over 3 decades now. It was very difficult for me to know where to pitch this presentation given the audience, and if some of it is too basic for those who have a lot of experience with the United Nations, then I apologize in advance. But let me first give you some context about the United Nations and the work that we do. The United Nations was created in 1945 following the devastation of the Second World War with one central mission, and that was the maintenance of international peace and security. Our colleagues accomplished this by working across the globe to prevent conflict, helping parties in conflict make peace, deploying peacekeepers, and creating the conditions to allow peace to hold and to flourish. However, much has changed since 1945, and the UN system has adapted to the growing needs of our planet and member states. Today, the UN system comprises of numerous different funds, programs, and specialized agencies, each of which are semi-autonomous and have their own specific areas of work, their own disciplines, their own leadership, their own budgets, and of course, their own opportunities for you in the management consulting community. Many of you will be familiar with UNICEF, the World Health Organization, the World Food Programme, the Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, which are among the foremost global organizations that are relied upon by the international community to coordinate the provision of critical humanitarian relief in emergencies due to natural and man-made disasters in support of the relief capacity of each of the national authorities. During COVID-19, the World Health Organization has taken on a global leadership role in shepherding our world safely through the pandemic. And I'm sure that none of you are strangers to the organizations such as the World Bank and the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, which are also key institutions of the UN system. The UN system also includes numerous specialized agencies and entities that have been established to address more unique and localized needs. As example, in 1949, the General Assembly created the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine refugees in the Near East, UNRWA, to provide emergency relief to some 750,000 Palestinian refugees who had lost their homes and livelihoods as a result of the 1948 Arab-Israeli conflict. Today, some 5 million Palestine refugees rely solely on UNRWA services, which encompass education, healthcare, relief and social services, camp infrastructure and improvement, and microfinance, along with emergency assistance during times of armed conflict. You will also undoubtedly have heard of the Sustainable Development Goals and the UN system's work on climate change. Entities such as the UNFCCC and the United Nations Environment Programme work tirelessly with governments, NGOs, and civil society organizations to promote sustainable practices and to ensure that global warming, pollution, and man-made environmental disasters do not jeopardize the prosperity of our future generations. The areas of work are as diverse as the needs are immense, from ending poverty to gender equality to migration to international law and justice and disarmament. What connects all the different entities across the UN system is our shared values and a commitment to bringing positive change and for facilitating better governance and decision-making that will make the world a better place. Something I'm sure that resonates with all of you also. As the head of the United Nations supply chain operations, I find myself in a fortunate position of being able to directly support the UN system across the entire spectrum of its work. Before I explain how to get involved in supporting the UN system, allow me to briefly explain the work of my office. The Office of Supply Chain Management is part of the Department of Operational Support and was established on the 1st of January 2019 as part of the Secretary General's management reforms. Our department plays a key role in supporting a United Nations that is more agile, effective, transparent, accountable, efficient, pragmatic, and decentralized to better support its organizational operational activities. The Department of Operational Support provides operational support to all UN Secretariat entities, including advisory, operational, and other support services. Our client base consists of almost 200 different entities located around the globe, including 136 resident coordinators, being the most recent addition. Serving a globally diverse set of clients with at times truly challenging needs and demands is the cornerstone of my work as the head of the supply chain, and ensuring that we deliver high quality services with high levels of consistency and client satisfaction is one of my primary concerns. The fact that the United Nations procures approximately $18 billion worth of goods and services annually gives us a flavor of the range of activities that we engage in on behalf of our clients. The United Nations Secretariat alone spent approximately $2.7 billion on goods and services in 2021. In today's operational climate, providing services that our clients can be proud of requires much more than simply finding opportunities for optimizing revenue streams. In fact, the emergence of once-in-a-lifetime global challenges such as COVID-19, coupled with increasing demands for sustainable operations and ever-diminishing resources, necessitates a much more principled approach to serving. One of the most important principles is that one size does not fit all when it comes to meeting our clients' needs. There is a huge diversity in our clients and their needs, and it's important to recognize that clients' needs tailored professional attention that reflects the nuances and unique features of each requirement, whether it be devising wastewater management solutions or rethinking how the United Nations handles its travel. To help our clients implement their programs and mandates, we demand that our supplier relations are conducted with transparency, fairness, integrity, while ensuring we obtain value for money. All these elements are critical for the organization to maintain its moral standing and the good name of the United Nations, and to give reassurances to member states that we're using the funds they entrust us with wisely and with the necessary due diligence and care. The United Nations is in a unique position where we can have long-lasting positive impact on the ground in support of some of the world's most vulnerable people. Finally, please allow me to share some thoughts about the road ahead. In today's world, where we are losing human lives due to the direct effects of climate change, and where these numbers will soon match those triggered by war, as professionals responsible for steering corporate behavior, we must all do better, and we must do so now. On our end, we've taken action to integrate sustainability considerations into almost all areas of our work, and we continuously look for innovative new processes, approaches, and solutions within the operational and political constraints in which we operate. We must all become increasingly proactive in encouraging our partners and other stakeholders to rethink their operating models in line with the ESG goals. In short, being thought leaders across numerous disciplines, all of you in the audience today have a role to play as a catalyst and as an example to others. Together, we need to send a clear signal to businesses and communities the world over to start planning for that change. No, indeed, to start making that change. In view of climate change and its impact on our societies, I believe that we're soon approaching a time where environmental sustainability in all aspects of business and industry is not going to be an optional ambition, but a mandatory requirement. I'm certain that no one in the audience needs to hear about the unique challenges the past years and months have presented us and our clients. As the world slowly begins to claw its way back to a new normal, our clients are dependent on us to chart the way, a way that is more equitable, sustainable, resilient, and respectful of the bottom line of our shared planet and of our shared planet. Perhaps a collective and timely shift from the United Nations and the corporations that you advise on a daily basis will allow industries and businesses everywhere, and especially in developing countries and countries with economies in transition, to start making the necessary changes to be able to ensure that we treat the planet with the same respect that we treat our budgets and profits. To an outside audience, the UN system may seem like an impenetrable fortress, and finding ways to engage may seem difficult. However, as management consultants, you're in a position to get involved in ways not available to many others. I would also like to stress that United Nations is transforming. Faced with growing global challenges, increasing operational complexities, and diminishing resources, more than ever before, it is clear that we must transform at a far greater speed to be able to meet our obligations and to fulfill our mandates. We must do things better and we must work faster. We must innovate. We must be ready to make changes and adopt the shifting needs and crisis swiftly. To be able to progress along this path, we not only need a highly skilled workforce, we also need expertise that oftentimes needs to come from outside the system. UN entities regularly rely on the expertise of management consulting companies and individual consultants to crystallize agendas, to help shape strategies, and to assist with problem solving. We rely on your expertise and your diverse perspectives and experience to guide us and introduce us to new insights and ways of doing things. Consulting opportunities in the United Nations will always be there, and the needs from where I sit are growing. An increasing number of UN system entities are adapting to the fact that any meaningful transformation will also need to include significant resource optimization, and this in turn will result in a much leaner core workforce. The demand for highly skilled specialists and experts with ability to deliver quick results with unique, often niche expertise will clearly need to come from outside the organization, and thus opportunities will grow. I also agree with Dr. Nelson that consultants will need to be continuously upskilling themselves to remain relevant in our rapidly changing world. Finally, I would like to say, as trusted advisors, often sitting at the tables where important decisions are made, you have the ear of leaders that can drive real change in their organizations and communities. One particular area where you can make a concrete difference is in persuading organizations you work for to join the UN Global Compact and begin steering industry towards concrete commitments and greater alignment with the Sustainable Development Goals. You also might encourage your clients to become a signatory to the UN Women Empowerment Principles, or encourage women-owned businesses in your communities and businesses owned by those with disability to register as UN suppliers and explore available business opportunities. Instead, I ask you to join us in making a difference. Finally, in closing, I would just offer a small piece of advice. To be successful in partnering with the United Nations, you need to master two traits or skills: patience and persistence. The UN is a large bureaucracy, and sometimes it is not as responsive as we would all wish it to be. Anyway, I wish you much success in the future on this Day of the International Consultant, and I thank you for listening. Back to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I can't even see. Thank you very much, Christian, for providing some powerful and critical suggestions around resource optimization and other things, and also the advice about the 2 Ps, persistence and patience, so that consultants can take our practices to another level, and also that interesting suggestion about our clients joining the UN Compact and becoming signatories. These are things that maybe some of us don't really, as you say, realize the influence that we have. I think you've given us much food for thought. I'll just let the rest of the group know that we're going to move straight on to our other 2 panelists, and then we'll have one big combined Q&A at the end of that. So now, second out of the gates, we are very happy to have Eric Zinyengere, the Vice President of the National Institute of Consultants of Zimbabwe, our sister agency, who will be sharing opportunities for collaboration between CIMC and ZNIC in the South African development community. Eric's introduction will be done by Joan Reed, a member of Barbados chapter, of the Jamaica chapter. My apologies, Joan. And I'll hand over to you. Joan, over to you.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Ladies and gentlemen, I introduce to you Mr. Eric Zinyengere, a certified management consultant who is also a certified life and grief coach and KPI professional. He has a BSc in applied mathematics and master's in strategic and management leadership. He's a catalyst who purposed his life to help people and businesses unlock and exploit their full potential. Mr. Zinyengere comes to us from Zimbabwe and has been running his own advisory company, Team Advising Services. He has subsidiaries in consulting, wellness, and recruitment in the Southern African region. Eric has worked with the government of Zimbabwe, supporting reforms around businesses, and has also worked with leaders and executives from across the world in coaching senior government officials and CEOs towards achieving greater results and success. So as a passionate consultant, scholar, and lecturer in leadership, Eric is well suited to address us on this special ICDay. Please make him feel welcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joanne. I feel overwhelmed after having had all the presentations that were made today by such esteemed speakers. So I hope that my brief presentation will also get us to think a little bit. That's my only hope, that it will get us to think a little bit. I think a lot of things have been said already that probably speak to what I'm about to share as well. I am waffling a little bit here as I put my screen on. Let me put my screen on here and get us going. So thank you very much. And let me spend a bit of time just talking about opportunities for South-to-South cooperation. Now, I reflected on this topic and what we could discuss about, and I thought, let me just start firstly by introducing the ZNIC or CIMC Zimbabwe, the Zimbabwe National Institute of Consulting, just so that you know a little bit about us. And I'm not going to give you an overview of who we are, but just share our mission, our vision, and our values. Because I think those give a little bit of insight into what we're all about or what we're trying to do. So ZNIC, in essence, is we say our mission is to build the profile, recognition, and influence of the management consulting profession and its practitioners in our markets, which I'm sure would be a mission for many of our institutes, but I share it so that at least you see where we're coming from. Our vision is to be a recognized and internationally accredited body for professional management consultants in Zimbabwe by 31 December 2023. We are recognized and accredited, but we'd like to keep that as our vision even moving forward for now. Our values being professionalism, integrity, excellence, accountability, and transparency. And I just also wanted to share very quickly the focus areas that we have as ZNIC. We've put ourselves into 4 key areas: meal, which really is about membership, events, advocacy and lobbying, then a certification area, education and research, and then sustainability. So these are the 4 pillars that drive our work as an institute. Now, that's as much as I'll say about that. And then I'm just going to quickly talk about cooperation. Cooperation can come in many different ways. And, it's great that I saw that even as we were discussing earlier on, smart partnerships or smart arrangements were spoken about. And I'd like to kind of right on the same topic, actually, interestingly enough, and just talk about types of cooperation. not all cooperation helps us to unlock opportunities. But I believe that if we can find cooperation where we're satisfying each other's needs, that is win-win. And hopefully that as we share today, I'll be able to highlight some ways in which we can identify real win-win or smart cooperation that allows us to win together. So, Ken Ferrazzi says this, he says, it matters less how smart you are and how much innate talent you're born with, or even most eye-opening to me, where you came from and how much you started out with. Sure, all these things are important, but they mean little if you don't understand one thing. You can't get there alone. In fact, you can't get very far at all. And this is from his book, Never Eat Alone. And I think this is quite profound, and the way we need to be able to appreciate the opportunity around smart cooperation, that the future of consulting is about us working together. It's about people cooperating. A lot of us, maybe started out as small consulting companies doing our own thing. And maybe some are still small consulting companies where you're an individual or there's one or two people only. But, the opportunities, some of the ones especially that, you find in places like the United Nations, sometimes require a bigger team if you're going to do the huge assignments. It's simple for you to do the smaller assignments, but to do a big assignment, usually it requires us to be able to collaborate, to work together as a bigger team. And that's where I believe the opportunities for smart cooperation exist, for us not to eat alone, but to eat together. And, why would these opportunities be so important? Well, there are three key challenges we have, and I've kind of already begun to highlight those. Scale. And for a lot of consulting companies, the breadth in terms of being able to have, a wide number of people to offer or a wide pool of resources is not always possible. And the other is depth. You might have depth as an individual, but the depth of the team might not exist in that way. And sometimes you then need others to work with. Then there's also the issues of sustainability. Sometimes businesses struggle, consulting organizations struggle because, we are one-man shows once again, or, it's all about the individual who leads the organization. And as such, continuity doesn't begin to exist. And it becomes an opportunity for collaborating or for looking at how we work together. The other is just to have systems, to have independence, to have credibility. These are things that sometimes come from the fact that you're associated with others. People can see that there are people who are willing to work with you, and so they appreciate that you are a credible organization. Or even the fact that maybe you're able to bring in a CMC when you're not a CMC to work with you, and people can say, okay, there's some credibility there as well. And the independence of having somebody else sometimes do a quality review of your work, who is an expert as well, or deemed to be a professional, that in itself sometimes gives clients confidence in terms of what we do. So these are all opportunities, I believe, that exist for us to collaborate. Now, in what areas should we collaborate? And I picked 4 key areas from becoming a partner on a book about professional services firms. And they speak about financial capital, infrastructure capital, social capital, and intellectual capital. And I want to believe that when we are able to cooperate in these 4 areas, this is how we actually unlock opportunities. Sometimes you'll find you have the financial capital, you've got the revenue, you've got money and investments, but you don't have the infrastructure, you don't have the people or the technology, and you need to partner with somebody else to do that. Sometimes you don't have all the skills and expertise, and you want to look for somebody else to partner with. And sometimes you just don't have the social capital, the alternative markets, or the connections to be able to do work in a certain market. So, for example, a consulting firm in the Caribbean could be asked to come in and do some work in Zimbabwe, because they're working with a company that has an office in Zimbabwe. But then they have to say to themselves, but do we have people there? Do we have resources there? How do we partner? What do we do to be able to actually serve that market and also provide a local flavor? And then those sort of things come into play. I'll give you an illustration right now. My wife is working on a coaching assignment for a Spanish company, and this assignment has come about through collaboration with fellow coaches. And the reason why she's on this assignment is because some of the coaches on the team are based in Africa. The Spanish company has an African office, and the coaches on the team in Africa were very clear that they would like somebody who understands their local environment to coach them. And this has become a partnership. And so it's things like that that we need to identify and say, how can we cooperate around these 4 different perspectives of capital? Is it financial? Is it infrastructure? Is it intellectual? Which one of these are you strong at? which one can somebody else be strong at? And how do we support each other in that way? And that provides greater collaboration and opportunities. And I kind of defined SMART with my own definition as well. I know we heard another definition for SMART, or the A in SMART, but here I've said it's structured. In terms of SMART partnership, it has to be structured, mutual, aligned, results focused, and trust based. And I think that's the idea of us having SMART collaboration. That there's a structure to it, and it's important for us, whatever collaborations we have, that we always think about making sure we put a structure to that. But then it must also be mutual. It must be win-win, as we've said already. And it must be in such a way that it aligns to both of what our goals are or what our plans are for the future. And it must be clear what results each party is hoping to achieve or get from that process. And trust is critical. Without trust, it's very difficult for work or for a relationship to be built. So those are just things that I think are useful in terms of us thinking about, SMART collaborations. So, I want to share very quickly about something called We Are Smarter Than Me. And creating smart cooperation requires we, but it also starts with me. So each of us has to have a willingness to actually be able to get into some sort of smart cooperation. I know some of us are sometimes wary of cooperating with others because we're worried we've been bitten before, and once bitten, twice shy. And we're thinking, would I really want to get into a cooperation with someone else? Maybe someone on the other side of the world. Can I trust them? And hopefully this is where our institutes come into play, because, consultants are the ones who can really partner with one another in the different markets, but our institutes provide the buffer, provide the sense of comfort that you can partner with another in another country because, they're a member of a fellow institute. And that hopefully provides a little bit of credibility and strength to the process. But we have to be willing to take that step. I like this word, we are smarter than me, or this statement. And I like it because, many years ago, somebody, I think in the early 2000s, a couple of gentlemen actually wrote a book called We Are Smarter Than Me. And the notion of their book was they, created an online book where so many people were collaborating and writing parts of this book. And then they titled the book, We Are Smarter Than Me, with everybody, everybody's name somewhere in the book. Here's a copy of the book. You probably can't see it too well on my screen, but that's a copy of the book. And if you were to open it, you'll find that on the first page, there's actually a list of names of every single person who's collaborated in that book. And that's what We Are Smarter Than Me can mean. And there's nothing that stops us even having such collaborations to be able to even write together. So, and that actually brings me to this slide in terms of what are some practical ideas that we could be thinking about. Cross-cutting knowledge think tanks. These could be for us, for example, having an identification of, okay, there are certain consultants in this institute who focus on strategy, and there are some on this institute who focus on strategy. Can we get them together to share ideas, to be able to explore how strategy is done in the Caribbean and how strategy is done in Southern Africa? And are there opportunities for us to learn from each other? What experiences have each of us had? There's things that I've always said people in other areas will always find valuable. Zimbabwe has been as a country that has gone up and down in hyperinflation for a long time. So when you do strategy work here or you do process work here, you're doing work in a very different and dynamic environment. The world, as was shared earlier, is so uncertain now. We all talk about VUCA, and if we're all talking about VUCA, isn't it useful to be able to find ways to share experiences with people who've been living in VUCA all the time? Those are opportunities in themselves. And this is the idea of being able to collaborate to find ways to be even more effective in our work. Expert presentations, pretty much coming together for events like this one and inviting from the other side to be able to say, come and make presentations, and we learn from one another, we grow from one another. Sharing case studies is another way to do that. Even things like, I wrote there guest consulting because I couldn't think of a word to think about it, but how somebody does a guest appearance somewhere. I think it's possible as well, especially now. COVID has taught us that we can operate virtually. We don't need to be, in location, but we can operate virtually as well. Look, I'm right here, I'm in Zimbabwe, and speaking to many of you in the Caribbean. and a number of my colleagues from Zimbabwe are also here. So that opportunity means there's opportunities for us to also, collaborate on assignments where you bring in somebody who's from another jurisdiction, and they're able to contribute, to participate, to engage in the process as well. Even putting together joint bids, joint assignments for bigger assignments where it's required that you work together as a team. I've been involved in a few now where we've put together bids together as teams that are from different countries. And that in itself, means you're able to get the best skills you require for the work you want to do, and people who've actually got the experience that maybe the bid is asking for. And you're able to put that team together and have a more solid bid. And our institutes, once again, should provide that opportunity to reach out as a consultant and say, listen, I'm looking for somebody like this. Is there anybody like that in the Caribbean who I could work with on this assignment? And finding those people and being able to put together joint bids, shared publications. I already spoke about those already. And then quality assurance. One of the things that lacks in smaller consulting practices is that quality assurance. When you get into a big consulting firm, let's say you're talking to a Price Waterhouse or a KPMG or someone like that, you almost always find that they have someone they actually deem to be quality assurance on most projects. And, isn't it an opportunity in itself to be able to get an independent person to do quality assurance who's maybe not even in your market, which maybe provides confidence that this person, will do their quality assurance without any prejudice. And sometimes that is useful and of value to a client. And so it's important for us to be able to provide. And these are just some practical opportunities I believe exist. There could be many others, but I wanted to just highlight these ones as opportunities for us to be able to collaborate more effectively as consultants in different jurisdictions. So let me kind of close my short presentation here by talking about the value of cooperation and saying, according to Nichols, relationships are all there is. Everything in the universe only exists because it is in relationship to everything else. Nothing exists in isolation. So we have to stop pretending that we're individuals that can go it alone. So that's just, what I would like to finish off with, that we have to appreciate that we have to work together. And this provides us with an opportunity to do that. Thank you very much.
Well, Eric, thank you very much. I mean, the chat has been hot with comments about, how on point you are, and the fact that you really understand the assignment, and those points that you made there. Everybody particularly loves that we are smarter than me. I mean, that there was a number of comments about that, and just, I have to say that we are so blessed today. The presentations have really been on point and have provided so much perspectives, and you've certainly enlightened us, and I think you've indeed raised the level of anticipation, and maybe I might say excitement and anticipation among all of us for the possibilities of more South-South collaboration. I mean, we are accustomed a lot in the Caribbean to doing South-North collaboration to some degree, but this is really, really exciting that, we're finally, as is tangibly occurring on other fronts between various governments on this side of the Atlantic and governments on the African continent. We are really excited that, this hopefully will be the catalyst for numerous opportunities and shared bids, and on some of the many things that you've clearly spent time with your members thinking about how we can work together. And so now, before we get into the Q&A, because there's lots of questions and there's lots of comments, closest to home, we are happy to bring to the table a regional Jamaican powerhouse, Dr. Noel Watson, Chief Executive Officer of A to Z or A to Z Information Jamaica Limited, who will also himself talk a little bit about the risks and opportunities of collaboration among our Caribbean consultants. His introduction will be by Ronnie Antonius, the Suriname member of our CIMC board. Ronnie, your turn.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Brenda. I'm here. It's a pleasure for me to introduce Dr. Noel Watson. I have met him a few times at our conferences that we had since 2008. And it was always interesting to have a talk with Dr. Watson, because he always was able to bring some new insight and things that were discussed on the table. I think everybody knows that he is the CEO of A to Z Information Jamaica Limited. and the project director of this project. He has a PhD in economics, which specializes in international trade, finance, and cost-benefit analysis, economic evaluation. He has worked on all CARIFORUM member states, including those in the OECS, Caribbean overseas countries and territories, the French Caribbean, Canada, the UK, and Pacific Islands in Africa. Dr. Watson has over 30 years experience in the field of consultancy and has many assignments, have worked in economics business addressing, such as export development, promotion, expert economic evaluation, international trade and investment in goods and services, market research, intelligence, business development, and has worked with trade and investment promotion agencies in several countries, including Jamaica, Belize, Trinidad, and Tobago. He has successfully completed several projects with Caribbean Export Development Agency aimed at stimulating export of goods and services to the EU. Dr. Watson has further completed projects for various coalitions of service industries across CARICOM, including coordinating and leading a mission of cultural services, architects, engineers from Trinidad and Tobago to the UK, Germany, the Netherlands, Malta, France, and in pursuit of export opportunities. He has completed and is in the midst of completing several projects for the government of Jamaica, St. Lucia, and Tobago, Trinidad and Tobago, sorry. He is also involved in business planning and has developed the support of Caribbean Export, a business planning tool that can be used for new and existing small and medium enterprises. Dr. Watson is also a sports fanatic, and in his younger days, he used to play squash for the Jamaican squash team. I introduce to you Dr. Noel Watson. Over to you, Dr. Watson.
Thank you very much, my brother, Ronnie. We haven't seen each other for a while, but I'm really glad to be here today. After following those wonderful speeches, I feel somewhat shell-shocked. I mean, Claire, you just hit me in the head with all the future, and everybody else has just been giving me ideas. So I hope I'll be able to focus on my presentation. Will I be able to share screen? Okay, great. Thank you. Okay. I think, and somebody asked me to do this thing because we are at the firm level where we do this thing as a way of life. It may not sound as exciting as what other persons are presented, but this is really just what we do, hardcore consultancy. So I'm here to look at the benefits and risks of collaborating. And I'm so glad to be celebrating with CIMC's International Consultants Day today. Okay, my brief was that collaboration is a strong focus for us to move up the food chain. Too many of our consultants are individuals. Caribbean Export wants us to re-examine this approach and consider collaborating more. And Caribbean Export today is one of our main sponsors, and I fully agree with them. So I'm going to quickly speak to you about so my timeline in getting it in consultancy, the structure of my company to give you an idea of how we operate, the types of collaboration that we engage in, the dimensions of collaboration, benefits of collaboration, collaborating for new opportunities, the risks of not collaborating, and the imperatives for collaboration, and our 5-year goal. I won't spend too much time on the timeline, but you can just see that, back then I started consultancy as a grad student. Somebody came in, a consultant came in and collaborated with me and gave me an opportunity to earn money while I was a student. I realized later that I was grossly underpaid, but it was worth it for me. I came back to Jamaica. I set up a consultancy company with family and friends. I then went and worked in a bank for 7 years, an executive that really taught me about management and marketing. I then became an entrepreneur, set up a company that was doing very well at one stage. I'll tell you about that another time. And then I went as an individual consultant where we're looking at projects between 5,000 and 20,000, mainly from the CARICOM Secretariat. And then I went to work with UN agencies for 4 years. And then now, A to Z, our company was set up as a vehicle to move up the consultancy food chain. And we now do projects in the region from 20,000 to 750,000 US. And sometimes we operate up to 20 projects at a time. And we have numerous strategic alliances. I will say that over this time period, it's very important as consultants not just to stay in consultancy only. So we try to purchase a little bit of real estate as we went along, because in fact, as I look back, those are the things that really seem to have held their value very well. Our company, I want to show you this because our company is a family business, an international family consultancy business. Riva, who is the chief operating officer, is my daughter. She operates out of Trinidad. Phyllis, who is my sister, is the quality assurance manager. Denise, my wife, is a director. Lucinda, my niece, is a research and administrative manager. Miranda is a research and development manager. She's also a niece. And Beverly, my sister, is the operations process manager. And apart from us as a family, we have associates, 115 associates. So at any given time, we may have 50, 60 consultants working with us. And as you can see, we operate in these countries, which means that we've operated remotely long before COVID. So when COVID came along, it really didn't affect us in terms of our operations. In fact, it helped us in some ways because we didn't have to travel on things that we normally would have had to travel. Consultancy. When I talk about consultancy here, I'm referring mainly to, solicited consultancy as opposed to unsolicited, even though it makes a little difference. And in other words, it means that we respond to bids typically in our consultancy. And there are different types of collaboration that we face as a firm. Sometimes it's a consortium, sometimes a joint venture, just slightly different. We have the associates, as I mentioned, and then we have family. And as Nsombi said to you earlier, collaboration is a way of life for A to Z. As soon as our team sees a project opportunity, the first thing we ask is, who would be a good partner? And I think some of the people I've seen online here have been called, at some point to work with us. Now, what are some of the dimensions of collaboration? Now, Eric, you mentioned some of those. Why do you collaborate? Sometimes because of scale, you want to get bigger. Scope, you want to be able to do things in other areas or in other countries, which you can't do by yourself. The range of competencies. Well, I'm an economist. Well, if I want to do something in IT, I need to collaborate with somebody else. Lower cost. You may want to partner with a company that has some area that's lower cost. If you want to do research, they may have low cost researchers. These two here are very, very critical because in a lot of the EU and World Bank projects, they ask you to show your financial capacity. Well, you may be a small company, have never done a project more than $30,000. And the project is saying that you have to have managed projects over 100,000. Well, there it is. You can collaborate with a big partner and get into that field, get into projects that you couldn't get into. And thereafter, use the fact that you've worked on big projects before. Collaborate for technical capacity. This is the other one that's critical. You have to show that you have the technical capacity, otherwise you won't win a bid. So if you're going into something into space, like Claire was talking about, you better make sure that your partner is a space specialist, unless you are. Now, why the benefits of collaboration, as I mentioned earlier? Well, simple benefits are risk reduction, which is what this whole thing is about. Cash flow, you can spread the risk in cash flow. For example, one of the problems you will find with some agencies is that they take a long time to pay. Well, if you're a partner with a larger or a richer company, you'll be able to get an advance. Risk reduction by sharing work and playing to strengths. Those things stop you from messing up. Create local opportunities. Sometimes you need to pursue projects that neither party could do alone. Large projects, as was mentioned earlier, and compete in the foreign market. Create export opportunities. And as Eric mentioned, we do work in other countries, Africa, Pacific, and without our foreign partners, we wouldn't have been able to go there. And what is worse, you have to compete with these large foreign entities now that are out there against us. So you need larger critical mass. Also, you need to collaborate to share underutilized staff. Sometimes you have a secretary or an assistant that's half used. Collaborate, you can use them. Share accountants, lawyers, share space, share files in report writing. Collaboration provides critical mass to compete with large international firms locally and overseas. And I'll tell you, we come up against the big firms all the time now because the agencies are putting out bids that everybody over the world can apply for. And so far, God has been good. We win quite a few against the big firms because we come in with lower costs and sometimes we have much better talent. Collaboration is seeking new opportunities. Now, what I'm saying here, you may have local opportunities and you may have foreign opportunities, and you may want to collaborate within your area of specialty. Well, this is safe and you know the subject matter and the market, so you can collaborate with somebody within your area of specialty. You may also want to collaborate outside of your area of specialty and provide some diversification. So if you are an engineer, you may want to combine with an ICT expert. You may also want to collaborate outside of your industry. You know, so you may actually want to get into something as a consultant, like buying real estate, buying a business or starting a new business. I always say a bakery is the thing to start because everybody eats bread and it just requires flour and water. And one of the richest guys in Jamaica that I know, who now owns hotels, etc., started off in bread and still does bread. Foreign opportunities, you have to know the subject within your area. You have to know the subject matter, and you know your partner, of course, will know the foreign market, and that will help you. And of course, the earning of foreign exchange is a big one for us. And for A to Z, foreign exchange earnings has been a major advantage. In a country where the currency has been depreciating, that has been a major advantage. I don't even rush my foreign clients to pay sometimes because I know the Jamaican dollar has typically depreciated, whereas I rush my Jamaican clients to pay. Collaboration in responding to EOIs and RFPs. Well, this is critical. You can pursue many more opportunities if you collaborate. You can produce a greater variety of opportunities. And Eric mentioned this, you have greater strength and depth. And you're more able to compete with the international competition. I keep mentioning international competition, ladies and gentlemen, because that is where it's at. It's every project I go for, I see companies from the UK, the rest of the Caribbean, America, etc., etc. And as a result, what we did was play the game. We have some excellent foreign partners, and we try to submit, we submit at least one RFP or EOI every week. Collaboration in the execution of projects. What you'll find with collaborators, some of you have different strengths. Some of you are strong in secondary research. Like, you know, I see Claire is very good at that. Some are excellent with designing data collection instrument. If you're not, a data collection instrument can take you, you know, 3 months to design. Collecting data, data analysis, report writing, project management, very important. And also managing the client can't be taken for granted. The risks of not collaborating. And by the way, before you collaborate, make sure you have a strong contract or agreement in place with a partner. Choose a partner that can bring something to the table. Don't just bring a friend, because then you might end up carrying them. And choose somebody you trust. I don't have to go into that. Now, why might you need somebody when you're to collaborate with? A lot of projects these days have no mobilization fee, which means an individual consultant might be struggling. If you collaborate, you can get an advance often from your partner, and A to Z plays that role many times with his partners. Delays in clients making payments, well, you know that. I think every consultant knows that. And if you're an individual, that can drive you out of business and actually drives a lot of people out of consultancy. A rich or a big partner helps you. Missing good opportunities. Often it's, you know, A to Z does a lot of searches. So we see a lot of opportunities. When we call a lot of other people, they have missed them. And then they become partners with us. Submitting a losing proposal, that's a risk. For an individual consultant, this is a higher risk, but if you collaborate, different people bring different things to the table. And I will tell you, the amount of proposals that we have won by 1 point or 2 points, I can't believe it. And so don't take it for granted to choose somebody else that brings that 1 point or 2 points to the table, because that could be the difference between a $200,000 contract or not. Late submissions of deliverables is a risk. And if you're on your own, there's a high chance that you're going to be late. But if you're collaborating, you can split up the work. So some of the imperatives of collaboration before I finish. Funding agencies do not want to deal with administration of very small contracts anymore. In the old days, the funding agents would do with a $5,000 contract US. Now they don't want to do with anything less than 100,000, 200,000. International funding agencies seem to be raising the bar, which can rule out small companies. And a lot of our local consultants who operate as individuals will never meet some of these requirements. Minimum number of projects of a particular size. For example, they may say you need 3 projects that have been $250,000 in the last 5 years. Or minimum number of similar projects is this one. You need to have minimum staffing requirements, minimum range of experts. I mean, projects these days are asking you for experts in 10 to 12 different disciplines. An individual cannot do that. You have to collaborate. Also, there are some key areas that you're starting to notice, whether it's agriculture, education, they need ICT experts in them. They need change management. Change management, if I could go and train again at something, I think it might be change management, but I have Dr. Jaja, so I don't bother. Project management, gender, environment. And as I say, increasing international competition, there's increasing international competition now for anything over $40,000. So you really need to collaborate. Okay, so I'm finished. So what are my company's 5-year goal for A to Z? And having listened to Claire, I might actually change this. We want to move up the value chain and start looking at projects between $1 million and $5 million. They are out there. And to be honest, I'll tell you, the hardest projects that my company does are the $25,000, $30,000 projects, the little ones. People have you running all over the place, scampering. Yep. They're not sure what they have. They don't have the money, and they have you running all over the world. A big project is well organized. The client supports you, and you coolly walk away with your 750,000 US and feel like you've done a great job and you haven't even worked as hard, and your bank account looks better. And we would like to do an IPO on the Jamaica Stock Exchange within the next 5 years. So help us, God, and please pray for us. Thank you all very much.
Well, I have to say it again. We have had beyond value for money here today. Noel, thank you so much for laying out in stark terms the opportunities that many of our individual consultants can clearly see that they've been leaving on the table, or as you have said, not even being aware of, because they missed it. And you've also showing us, I made a few notes, the reason that the real risks. I mean, I think you articulated that very comprehensively, the real risks of going it alone. And it's back to Eric's point about the we being smarter than me. So I think everything that we've heard here this afternoon has really resonated and has kind of supported the other thoughts that everybody has put together. I'm sure that you're receiving a number of exploratory emails and contacts, etc. And hopefully, guided by you, or certainly led by you, the charge being led by you, hopefully there'll soon be an even bigger uptick in collaborative initiatives between our region, within our region, extra-regional, and with global counterparts, through agencies like Eric's and the institutes as well. Okay, so now I'd like to say that I'd like to open up this for us to go into an open Q&A session with all 4 of the panelists, Noel, Christian, Eric, and if Claire is still on, we're happy that she can participate as well. And I'd like to ask people to put specific questions either in the Q&A chat, or if they're more comfortable in the regular chat that everybody's been putting lots of comments. Noel, I'm sure you're seeing it. Excellent presentation, useful tips, feedback, well done, very practical information, etc., etc., etc. So I will start off with something, because as I was making a few notes, and where did I make it, on which piece of paper? Here it is. I'd like to ask Christian, I'm going to throw this one to you. What is the UN's perspective on, collaborative vehicles along the kinds of lines that Eric and Noel alluded to? Do you have a specific perspective that you would like to share?
Thanks, Brenda, and actually today's been a very informative day for me as well. Not only did I learn a lot from Claire, but I also learned a lot from Eric and Noel. Being on the other side, Noel, it's always useful. In terms of collaboration, absolutely. We recognize that a lot of companies are small companies or have a particular expertise. And in order to fulfill the needs of a particular requirement, they need to partner with other consulting companies or indeed individual consultants in order to submit a comprehensive proposal for a particular requirement. What we normally ask is, however, that one entity will take the lead. So the contract will be with one particular entity, and then they will subcontract the different aspects of a particular requirement to either individuals or other companies. So that's normally the way it's handled. But we certainly want to encourage small and medium-sized enterprises and individuals to contribute to the UN's work. So absolutely, thank you.
Okay, I'm just keeping my eye on the chat to see. I'd like to ask everybody who, I mean, we still have 74 persons on, so please, this is the opportunity to throw a question or a comment, that we can discuss. I'd like to move over to you, Eric, based on what Noel just said there in terms of, the role that A to Z has taken. And I think both of you spoke to the issue of trust. I'll finish my, in fact, no, we have no, let me finish the point and then we have a question for Mr. Saunders again. Eric, so do you see, the Institute of taking on potentially part of that role of being the convener of the collaborative entity, or do you see that as a possibility, or do you see it more that it would be an individual organization as A to Z that would then pull together or be the lead in the context that Mr. Saunders said, and then bring the other individual consultants along?
No, generally, Brenda, I think it probably is easier for an organization like A to Z or mine or any other organization to be the lead, primarily because we're a registered body. There's experience and so on that comes with that, which is associated with the organization, and certain requirements that the UN or any other body would probably be easier met that way than by an institute. But I think the institute can certainly still help to create or facilitate that process and be part of helping that process to be possible. Yeah. Okay,
thank you. It was just a question. There is a question in the chat for Mr. Saunders. It said he spoke to the issue of patience and persistence. If those are not an option, what are some of the other ways that consultants can work with the UN?
Thank you, Brenda. And I think from my experience with dealing with the UN and working with the UN for the last 30 years in different UN entities, I think you still need to have patience and persistence. Why? One of the issues that Noel referred to was some agencies are quite slow in paying people. And you have to understand that that's going to happen because they are large bureaucracies and it has to go from one place to another. A lot of UN entities now, particularly the supply chain element of it, the procurement end, understand that in order to get the best value, they've got to learn to pay people and pay people quickly. So I think things have improved. I would say things have improved. In terms of persistence, what I meant with persistence is the first time you submit a proposal to the UN, you may not get it because you're positioning yourself within a particular requirement, and there are other people who are competing for the same requirement. So if you don't succeed in the first instance, I would encourage you to ask the UN for a debrief and find out from the UN where perhaps you weren't as competitive, or where perhaps your proposal wasn't as clear or as comprehensive as it needs to be, so that then the next time you submit a proposal, you can take that into account, and it will be better. And it may take a few times before you actually win a contract. So that's what I meant by persistence. In terms of how you do it, I think what I try to explain in my presentation is the UN is not a single body. It's made up of 40 different organizations. Each one of those organizations has their own supply chain, their own procurement, and they advertise their own requirements. So you have to be looking for those individual requirements and to respond to them. So you need to keep an eye out. Obviously, a good place to look is the UN Global Marketplace, which is www.ungm.org. And that's where most of the requirements will be advertised. The other thing I think that's important to remember, particularly for individual consultants, is not all individual consultancies are handled by procurement. In some agencies, individual consultancies are done by the personnel office or the human resources office. So you also need to have your skills and perhaps your resume, if you're an individual consultant, on file with the HR people in a particular organization. The other thing I would advocate for is, if you're in a particular country, if you're visiting a particular country, pass by the UN office, show your face, drop a CV in, talk to them for a few minutes about what you have to offer, and so that they then know you and they know your skills, and when they have a requirement, they're more likely to reach out to you. But certainly, I think the idea of partnering with other entities like Noel's or like Eric's is a very good way to approach things, and I think will increase your possibilities of success sooner rather than later. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Christian. Some really good food for thought and some good suggestions I can be visiting. I mean, I hadn't never thought of that. Noel, one addressed to you specifically. What would you say is the unique selling point of a team consultants from the Caribbean? Why us versus the international firms?
Thank you for that question. What we have found in partnerships, especially for work in the Caribbean, and it's becoming increasingly popular now for clients to actually prefer some Caribbean involvement in the teams, and especially if you can have a good Caribbean leadership. Now, what makes them even happier is if you can bring in a couple of international experts on your team that will, have the international experience, also bring other ideas to the fore. So the Caribbean people, especially in the Caribbean, understand the culture, understand the nuances, understand projects that are going to get implemented. It's okay to bring somebody from outside to do a project in a prison in the Caribbean, but if he doesn't know how prisoners interface or interact, or some of the cultural things and the behaviors, they're going to make recommendations that suit the United Kingdom, and afterwards it's definitely going to go on the shelf. So that the Caribbean people bring in the local knowledge, the understanding of the culture, the nuances, whether it's in cultural industries or whatever. That's what we have, and that's what we have to leverage.
Thank you so much, Noel. You said it hit it right on the head. Understanding the culture. Having worked with a Big Four, a lot of the times it was the local knowledge that really made a difference in making sure that your recommendations are implemented. Because after all, you don't want to spend a lot of time, and then at the end, as you say, it just ends up being a report sitting on a shelf. You really want practical, implementable solutions that are implemented quickly. Because if it doesn't get implemented quickly, the chance of it gradually over time exponentially decreases. We have another question from Andrea. It's not to anybody specific, so since I'll ask Eric to start with this one. How can we make management consultancy more sustainably affordable to the small and micro businesses in our region with the view of helping such entities to grow?
It's a hard question. I mean, we have exactly the same challenge. And I guess this is one of those things that might even be an opportunity for us to share knowledge and try and share ideas together. One of the things I've found in recent times, though, is, maybe not necessarily supporting them in the same way we would the bigger organizations, and maybe taking more of almost like a mentor or coaching arrangement with those types of small businesses. Because when you try and actually say to them, I'll come in and run a workshop, or I'll spend the next 3 months working with you, it's too expensive for them. But if they're able to make you a sounding board and talk to you here and there about what they're trying to do, and you're helping them with templates or tools, that might make it easier for them to at least begin to grow. And they know that you walked a journey with them, even as they grow and become bigger. So that's something I found useful in our own market. Yeah.
I could add that one of the major constraints faced by micro small enterprises is the whole issue of finance. And one of the problems is, once you want to graduate from being a very small entity and you have to go to the bank or to some institution for money, they require a business plan. And a business plan is not necessarily easy for anybody to do. Well, that is why you noticed earlier, Caribbean Export funded A to Z to develop a business planning tool, where if you want to do a business plan, you basically go on to our tool and it asks you a set of questions. And once you answer the questions, it's actually, and when you finish answering the questions, some of them will be multiple choice. Once you finish and you press submit, it basically gathers the whole thing and puts it in the format of a business plan. And all you have to do then is just make minor tweaks, and you can take it to the bank. And it's that kind of thing that you have to do. We have some other ideas, which I won't tell you here, that follow that whole sequence that will help micro and small enterprises. But that is definitely one, making things easier.
That's really, really interesting, Noel. I mean, that's something that certainly in Barbados and the Eastern Caribbean, I know that there are a lot. I mean, every day there are all these small, maybe some of them are not even so micro, who just don't have the bandwidth, or even the concept, or even the context of what they have to put in a business plan, because they've never really had to do that. So that's definitely something that I think that there'll be a lot of outreach or to see how that can be leveraged. Maybe this is something that CIMC can work with you to sort of work with Caribbean Export. I'm very interested in that part about Caribbean Export funding that, because maybe this is another thing that instead of us waiting for them to fund, to bring things to the table, that maybe we as CIMC, and then maybe in collaboration with other institutes globally, we can say, okay, here are the challenges that we are having. This is what we need the funding for, to create tools to make it better for these small and micro enterprises to be successful. So that's something that maybe we can take that. I see some other questions here now. Let me just see if I can get one of them. This one is from, hold on, go back up here. Do you see any of value in setting up a holding company as a consultant consortium? If so, can anyone suggest the best jurisdiction to set up such an entity?
It's a difficult question. I mean, I definitely think Canada is one of the places that I would consider, because Canada seems to be involved in a lot of things that we are in the Caribbean, and they're also involved in things that are in the United States. And this, it seems to be a reasonably good place. And I collaborate with Canadian firms, and so if I was going to suggest anywhere, that would be it. But it really depends on where you want to go. If you want to go to Africa, if you want to go to different places, I think that will determine where that holding company is best established.
That's a good point.
And Brenda, let me
go ahead, Christian.
Okay, Christian first.
The difficulty or the downside to that is, if you establish a holding company, you're establishing a holding company from scratch. So you have no experience. So when you're bidding, particularly if you're bidding for a UN requirement, they're going to look at that and they're going to say, well, here's a company, but it has no experience. I've seen people do that because rather than just wanting to come to work with the UN as an individual, when they normally generally go through HR, in order to compete for some business through the procurement entity of that particular UN entity, they have set themselves up as a holding company. In more instances, however, I have seen them partner with the likes of Eric and Noel and established companies, and they stand a much better chance of being successful if they do that.
Sorry, there was somebody else. Was that?
Yeah, Brenda, Danny here.
Hi, go ahead.
And I suspect the question was more, rather than a holding company, really a consortium, which is more amenable to what Christian is talking about. And one comment is that within the Caribbean region, where you set up your consortium, where you set up your company, choose wisely because of the CARICOM agreements with regards to tax and so on, you can actually locate in a very low tax jurisdiction, but still be domiciled in your home country and working from there. So choose very carefully from a tax purpose.
Thank you very much, Danny. That's a good point. Eric, a specific question to you. Could you comment on the cooperation between the Consulting Association in Zimbabwe and perhaps with other African countries?
So I saw that question. Thanks, Tamara. So if you look at ZINIC, when we started out, we actually were under the South African Institute, and they supported us for the first few years. We worked very closely with Angelo, who's the president there, and he was coming into Zimbabwe quite a few times. He came to speak at a few of our events. He was the lead assessor in assessing as we were certifying the first CMCs in country as part of that process. So that was good collaboration. We've followed the same mantle, and right now we are working with the Zambian guys, working on how we can establish an institute in Zambia. And initially they're probably going to work under us as a chapter as we support them. And in that respect, Namrod has actually been out there when he was president to actually speak at one of their events. And fortunately, I was in the country at the time and also joined him for that, just for us to be able to begin to build and support them in their journey. At the same time, we're also in discussions with a few of the other countries, even as far off as Nigeria, which is West Africa, we're Southern Africa, to talk about potentially setting up not a SADC, but an Africa-wide, collaboration or institute in some shape or form. It's a bit far away because we've got only about 4 institutes in Africa that are accredited and running, and but we're learning from each other as well. You'll find as well that we've learned from Nigeria some of the things they've done in terms of governance that we found to be useful. We've also adopted. One of those is as a relatively young accredited institute, setting up a board of trustees to maintain some of the foundational values that we have, and that's something we're now doing with the founders, the first few members who really founded the institute, belonging to that board of trustees initially, and then transitioning, and that's something we've learned from what Nigeria has done, so as to make sure we're sustainable. So I hope that those are useful thoughts in terms of what we're trying to do at an institute level.
Thank you. I think there's so many pearls of wisdom that we've got from so many persons today. I think this is going to be the last question because it's now 4 o'clock, and we are actually running a few minutes late. So we're actually running about 10 minutes late, which is we've been doing all day. What do you see as some of the untapped sectors that regional or Caribbean consultants do not traditionally get involved in? So this is probably more for Noel, or maybe, yeah, Chris.
That is an interesting question, actually. you know, what I can say is that there are some areas where I don't think we have enough people in, and climate change being one of them. Every time climate change projects come up and we look for somebody, we can't, you know, everybody's too busy. And I'm saying, boy, that's another thing I should have gone into. Believe it or not, ICT is an area that we need a lot more strength in. Every time we go for a project in those areas, we seem to come up short, or many times we come up short compared to some of our international competitors. So those are two areas which are not untapped, but I think there's a lot more scope for us to do more in those areas.
Interesting. I would climate I would have thought about, but I would not have necessarily intuitively thought IC. But I suppose when you stop and think about some of the things that Claire was saying earlier, and the trends, and you know, and how rapid the changes, I think that's, you know, and the skill sets that are needed today. And if you didn't start getting those skill sets 2 or 3 years ago, then you can't deliver and compete in that space, because it's quite, you know, technical, and you can get obsolete very quickly in certain ICT areas.
Brenda, may I comment on that last question? I think one area where we are deficient in competencies is in change management. A lot of people say they are change managers, but change management is a set of competencies, very much like project management, that it's when you become certified that you realize how much this discipline is. A lot of people manage projects, but they do it intuitively and do not bring the structure and the competencies and the skills and the tools to project management. And the same thing with change management. And I think we need a lot more certified change managers and more certified project managers in the Caribbean as consultants, management consultants, and the CMCs, because a lot of us, we figure we know management consultancy. It's when we actually prepare to become CMCs that we realize how little we know. My 2 little bits.
Thank you, Nsambi, for that. I mean, that's quite, that has once again to me hit the nail on the head. I think that there are a lot of, it's back with everything else. You know, we have people that do things, but then it's only if you have done it and have gone through the rigor of the particular area, whether it's KPIs, Eric, or whether it's, you know, whatever the area is. It was only when you've gone through the rigor of doing it formally that you realize actually that before that you were just touching the surface of the particular, you know, strength or area that you were trying to operate in, and then you realize how much was under the tip of the iceberg. And that applies to change management, ICT, to project management, etc. All of the things that you can get specific certifications after you have invested time and energy in qualifying. Well, at this point now, I would like to use this opportunity, and I would like to say that from my perspective, and I think I speak for everybody, that we have come to the end of what has been a most educational, informative, and on many fronts enlightening webinar. And I'd like to ask each of the 3 guest speakers to provide a 30-second summary of the key takeaway that they would like all attendees to leave from their perspective, the key takeaway that you would like people to leave with. So I'll start from the back and come forward. So Noel, you were always last. I'll start with you first, and then we'll go in reverse order.
Yeah, and that's appropriate since I'm the first, Noel. Yeah, so I will say, really collaborate, number 1, collaborate, number 2, collaborate, number 3. If you do that, you will enhance the number of opportunities that come your way. That's it for me.
And Eric?
So thank you very much. Let me finish with an African proverb that says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go with others.
Thank you. And Christian, you get to have the last wrap.
Thank you, Brenda. I think, I mean, not to repeat what Noel and Eric said, I think collaboration is good. I think some of the things to remember, besides the patience and the persistence, I think is to remember the UN is not a single body. The UN is made up of 40 plus different organizations, and each one is sort of semi-autonomous. So you need to approach each of those organizations, or approach the organization where you have a particular discipline and that organization needs that particular discipline. I think the opportunities for consultants, both companies and individuals, are just going to increase as budgets tighten and as the world changes so rapidly. People will not have those core disciplines within house. They will seek them as and when they need them from the outside. I do agree with the comments that are made that change management is a discipline that is lacking around the world. It's very difficult to find good change management expertise. So that's something, if you're just starting out or you're thinking of going, yeah, change management would be a good one to go to. I also agree with Noel. Climate change, renewable energy, all those kinds of things, sustainability, things that contribute to a circular economy are all hot topics at the moment. Thank you.
Well, at this point, I will now ask Danny, or Rabindra, but we call him Danny Jagannath, the VP of our CIMC, to give a brief vote of thanks and wrap up of today. Danny, over to you.
Right, thanks, Brenda. And Brenda, I'll echo your sentiments earlier today. Wow. And I just have to say that it has been raining, well, raining in Trinidad since 8 o'clock this morning. And this session has warmed me up considerably. What we have actually discussed is magnificent. Although the pandemic has negatively impacted many industries, it can also present consulting firms with opportunities, which is part of the discussion that took place this afternoon. Our discussions today spoke to some of these opportunities. These opportunities exist for those who wish to grab them. As consultants, we have to grab them and continue to grow our profession. The future is ours to make, the future is ours to take. Our speakers have inspired us with their wise words and their sound advice, and for that we are grateful. You have given us a tremendous amount of food for thought, and a lot of what was said will resonate with us for a long time. And hopefully a lot of what you've actually indicated to us, we will take and act upon it. We have to thank all our speakers. Firstly, Dr. Claire Nelson, Chief Ideation Leader of the Futures Forum, our opening batter who knocked it straight out of the park. Claire talked about from future shock to future ready and painted a wonderful and boundless perspective of the future for us in the Caribbean and as consultants in the Caribbean. She identified the issues, but rather than just identifying the issues, she provided relevant solutions for us to ponder. She gave us peepholes into the future with her headlines in the future videos, and she synthesized a lot of our thoughts into an excellent presentation of a view of the world of the future, especially for us as consultants. And for this, we are really we'll be eternally grateful to Claire for stimulating the conversation this afternoon and setting the tone for others to follow. Christian Saunders, Assistant Secretary General, UN, he shared his thoughts on the future of management consulting, leveraging on his tremendous experience with the UN and understanding that the UN is a major source of global consulting work. He advocated patience and persistence in dealing with the UN and indicated to us and reinforced with us, in fact, that the UN has a tremendous amount of opportunities for us as consultants, globally and within the region. Then we had Eric Zinyengere, and Eric, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. He shared his thoughts on opportunities for South-South cooperation, which is the main reason why we brought him into our discussion. We need to actually have much more of that South-South cooperation. He contextualized this by discussing the need for consultants to collaborate, and that resonated so well with everybody today. the panelists as well as the audience. And he identified areas for collaboration. He shared concrete recommendations for us to follow through on. And thank you very much, Eric. And the first Noel, who was last in the panel, his presentation on the benefits and risks of collaborating brought it home to us within the region. We have to change our mindset from individualism to collaborators. Again, he reinforced what Eric said and what Christian alluded to and what Claire spoke about. He gave us good insight into the whys and wherefores for collaboration, for the benefits of collaboration, the challenges, the risks. And all of this led to him stating that collaboration was an imperative. And as he gave in his last 50-second speech, number one is collaboration, number two is collaboration, number three is collaboration. Thank you again, Noel. When you put all of this together, it actually created a dynamic for us as the management consulting fraternity within the region to go back, sit down and ponder, are we where we should be to go forward? And taking all of that has been said and actually putting it into a melting pot, certainly what will emerge is really a more successful management consulting profession or sector within the Caribbean region. We have to thank, well, thanks also have to go out to Robert Budenstein, Chairman of CIMC Global Institute, and Riemann Nasser, Executive Director, for their greetings and congratulations. CIMC Global, as our parent, in inverted commas, helps us to be good at what we do as a consulting business support organization. We also have to thank all of our sponsors. Caribbean Export Development Agency, ably represented today by Alison Francis, they're indefatigable services sector advocate and a staunch supporter of CIMC. TMR Sales and Service Limited, Ansa Makal, one of the premier regional conglomerates, and Trinidad and Tobago Coalition of Services Limited and Signia Globe Financial. Thanks also have to go out to the CIMC planning team who worked hard to make this celebration a success. And then somebody said it before. In particular, we'd like to thank Adelwyn Holder and Charmaine Graves Sandy, who worked hard in the background to ensure that the day progressed smoothly. Of course, our host, who tied in our whole session and made sure everything progressed smoothly. Brenda, thank you very much. And of course, it'll sound funny when I say it, the leadership from our leader and President Nsombi Jaja. Thank you very much, Nsombi, for shepherding us through this International Consultants Day. And folks, I would like to say, this is the third year we've been celebrating it. And every year we've grown from strength to strength. And we are actually certainly going to exceed what we have done this year, next year. So we look forward to your participation then. So thanks to you, our participants. Without you, these celebrations would have been baseless and hollow. You were indeed a wonderful audience, sharing your thoughts on the chat, asking relevant questions. If you are not members yet of CIMC, we gladly welcome you to join our institute, the Caribbean Institute of Management Consultants. And I'm sure half of you who are here today are not members. Well, by next year, you can actually help us grow our association to be even bigger and better. Which leads to a few words about upcoming events geared to enhancing our profession. Because we have you as an audience, and because we are focused not only on certified management consultants, we are focused on the management consulting profession within the region. So in mid-July 2022, we will facilitate another ISO 2700 workshop. This is the ISO standard for management consulting. We conducted 2 earlier this year, and the ISO 2700 workshop is an integral part of CIMC Global's competency and consulting framework. In September 2022, we will facilitate a principles and practice of management consulting, workshop for all members pursuing their Certified Management Consultant certification. And also to anyone who is interested in really gaining a better understanding of the management consulting profession and improving their consulting skills. So it's not only open to CMCs, it's open to all consultants and all business professionals actually. So those are the two key things that are coming up. And in between, we are going to have smaller sessions looking at specific tools and techniques. And it's so wonderful today that some of the discussions centered around some of these tools or techniques, and some of these things are actually discussed in our Principles and Practice of Management Consulting workshop. Today has been a wonderful day, and all of us have contributed to make it a resounding success. So once again, thank you to our speakers, to our audience, to our CIMC directors and persons who assisted us along the way. We thank you very much collectively for what we have achieved today, and we look forward to a continued relationship. You are now part of our network, so we are going to make sure that we reach out to you from time to time with sessions much like these and other sessions related to the management consulting profession. So thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the day, and folks,
Before you go, all of these panelists and the presenters and the people who introduce, would you please turn on your cameras so we can take one picture, please? We would really appreciate that. I mean, we have Norma, I don't know who that is, Lois, Adelwyn, Joan. If you could turn on your camera, Mark, so we can just take a picture. I'm not sure who's taking it. Thank you, Mark, Adelwyn, Joan, Lois, thank you. Joan, Ria. Good. So I think we're pretty much right. Good. So if somebody can somebody?
Yes, I'll go ahead and do it.
Thank you very much.
Ready? Cheese. Happy CMC.
Happy CMC.
I'll just one last one. I guess I have to be included. Okay. Okay, great.
Thank you very much. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think we're wrapped. We've been on for quite a long time, but I can't believe it's 4:15 already. I mean, you know, this is definitely one of the best ICD days that I've ever attended, and I have learned so much. So I'd like to thank once again Dan. He did a fabulous job. He didn't leave me anything else to say. So I'd like to tell everybody to goodbye. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and I look forward to reaching out and communicating and keeping the connection that we have done south, north, southwest, and also internally here within our various countries and our institute. So thanks everybody, and have a good evening, and enjoy the rest of your ICD day.
And virtual drinks on us.
Yes, on us. You can have whatever you want. You can have one of those bottles of 7,000 euro wine right now virtually.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay. Bye.
Bye. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Very well done, guys. Very well done. Excellent.
It was good.
Yep, excellent.
to say very well done, Brenda. And who else is there, Adeline? It was